War is often described with numbers, dates, maps, but in many families, including ours, it lives in memory. Silent, but it's there, through the stories passed down, through the experiences that people lived. In Bosnia, Iran, and Afghanistan, the war didn't only happen on the battlefield. It happened in people's homes. It ruined childhoods, and it ruined futures for many. We are all from different countries, different continents even, yet we all lived a similar experience. In Bosnia, my country, families face ethnic violence, displacement, and millions of losses in the 1990s. In Iran, government repossession, the war with Iraq, and even currently active, the shootings, the protests, the instability. In Afghanistan, decades of conflicts. The Taliban, that are still the current ruling party, so it's still ongoing. But all of our parents and family learned to protect themselves, not only from bombshells, but they learned to protect us, children, from trauma. In our project, we don't want to look at the political side of views, but we want to show you the human side, the civilian side of the story. How war reshapes identity, memory, and what it really feels like to mean safe.
I have to say, everyday life was completely normal. We were on summer break. It was basically the last day of the holidays. And we were getting ready for the school year. And suddenly, in the early afternoon, the first bombing occurred. It's summer 1980, 1 year after the Islamic Revolution. The Shah was overthrown, and the country entered a period of political chaos and military weakness. Iraq's president, however, Saddam Hussein, saw this instability as an opportunity. On the 22nd September of 1980, Iraqi forces launched a full-scale invasion of Iran. Saddam Hussein believed Iran was too disorganized to respond effectively. He also wanted to gain control over disputed border regions, especially the Shatt al-Arab waterway and Iran's oil-rich Khuzestan province. But what Iraq expected to be a short and decisive war quickly turned into an 8-year-long brutal conflict with trench warfare, missile attacks, and chemical weapons. Civilians were increasingly drawn into the conflict as air raids became part of everyday life. Some of the civilians of Iran had the urge to fight for their country, so they volunteered to go to war. One of them is Amir. Being barely 16 years old, he lied about his age to go to war.
To understand Afghanistan, you must see Afghanistan as a land defined by a 40-year cycle of intervention. Afghanistan has lived through that cycle. The roots of the conflict in Afghanistan lie in the late 1970s, even though the world often focuses on the recent past. A tension between modernization and rural tradition in Afghanistan sets the stage for a global power struggle, historian Thomas Rutting explains. The Soviet Union intervened to a supporting failing regime and turned Afghanistan into the main battlefield of the Cold War in 1979. The Mujahideen were resistance fighters primarily against the Soviet Union. The Mujahideen got help from the US and from Pakistan. They fought a guerrilla war for almost 10 years, and according to the BBP, the Soviet withdrawal in 1989 left the power vacuum what turned into a big civil war. The civil war was the set stage for the rise of the Taliban in 1996. The Taliban were victims of the Afghanistan war. They were shaped by the Afghanistan war and have become radicalized through the strict Islamic schools in Pakistan. Al-Qaeda, formed in the 1980s to bring men from the jihad to Afghanistan, later joined the Taliban. The Al-Qaeda were supported by the CIA to fight the Soviet Union, but Osama bin Laden, the head of the Al-Qaeda, born in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia in 1957, has been building a network since 1988 and trained Islamic terrorists in camps. The war's intention came back after September 11, 2001. The US-led coalition launched Operation Enduring Freedom to break apart the terror networks that were there. Marcos Wirtz notes in the Lebanese Museum Online the start of a 20-year attempt at building a nation and making a country democratic, captured in the quote, "This was the start of a 20-year attempt at a nation building and democratization." The Taliban have seen the strength as a rebel group, is what the Council on Foreign Relations points out during the collapse of 2021. Taliban reclaimed the country. International isolation and restrictions will now face to Afghanistan under the role of the Taliban amnesty. The country suffers. Afghanistan lives under the restrictions today. From the novel The Kite Runner, the emotional weight of the history is made clear by Khaled Hossein. The decades of invasion and eternal betrayal takes a part of the culture. The endless cycles of the war keep the culture of Afghanistan broken.
The Bosnian War, also well known as the Bosnian War of Independence, took place from 1992 until 1995. After World War II, Bosnia was one of 6 republics in socialist Yugoslavia. A multi-ethnic state made up mostly by Bosniaks Muslims like myself, Croats Catholics, and Serbs Orthodox. We lived together under a communist system and a proud leader named Josip Broz Tito. He suppressed nationalism and spread love, and it worked. That is until his death. In 1980, Josip Broz Tito passed away. That left the whole region of Yugoslavia in a terrible state. The economic began to weaken. The political pressure from all sides came, and all-around unrest under the civilians. Due to these tensions and nationalism, everyone could see the outcome. That's why Slovenia and Croatia broke ties with Yugoslavia without a single shot fired. And us Bosniaks held a referendum in March 1992 declaring our independence. We were voted in favor by the Slovenes and the Croats, and we became internationally recognized. But the Serbs, they boycotted it. Due to the recognition, the war came. Bosnian Serb leaders, supported by the Yugoslav People's Armies and the Serbian government, rejected our independence and sought to create an ethnic clean Bosnia, meaning mass killings of Bosniaks and Croats. They forced displacement, systematic pressure, and all-around war crimes. Our cities were bombed, cultural sites were bombed, and even our main city, Sarajevo, was for a very long time under siege. But the worst atrocity came in July 1995 in a small town called Srebrenica. Srebrenica was supposed to be a UN-certified safe zone, and that's why many people rushed to get there because they didn't want to die in the war. The city held more than 8,000 Bosniak men, women, boys and girls. That is until the city fell.
Srebrenica se pretvara u najveću klaonicu. Poginuli i ranjeni neprestano se dovlače u bolnicu. Nemoguće je opisati. Svake sekunde po 3 smrtonosna projektila padne na ovaj grad. U bolnici je trenutno dovećeno 17 poginulih, 57 teže i lakše ranjenih. Da li iko u svijetu može doći da vidi tragediju koja se dešava Srebrenici i njenim stanovnicima? Ovo je nečuven zločin koji se izvodi nad bošnjačkim stanovništvom Srebrenice. Populacija u ovom gradu nestaje. Da li iza svega stoji Akaši, Budros Gal ili neko drugi, bojim se da za Srebrenicu neće više biti bitno.
The Bosnian Serb leaders. The boys were executed, every single one of them, and the girls and women were raped. That day marked the worst atrocity that happened to Europe since World War II. And after a long time, since the war finished, that day was marked as a genocide by the UN. The war ended though in December 1995 with the Dayton Peace Agreement. It did stop the fighting and the violence, but it left Bosnia politically divided and deeply affected by the war. Over 100,000 people died, millions were displaced, and the legacy of ethnic cleaning and genocides continues to shape the Bosnian society today.
I was 6 years old when the war started. Until then, our life was peaceful, secure. We were content.
We had a very simple, peaceful, and problem-free life.
My twin and I were very close. We had everything a family needs.
My parents had good jobs and we had everything we needed.
We had friends. We had fun. We didn't know war. We only knew war from movies.
Our parents worked, and that sense of security was always with us until the moment the war unfortunately changed everything.
But suddenly, we were in the middle of a full-scale war.
Of everything we lived through, the event that left the deepest mark was when my father was wounded. The unclarity of whether he was alive or not.
As real as life is to us, death remains something unfamiliar. But that wasn't the case there.
Leaving our country, our house, and our properties for survival and to find peace protection in a foreign country was the biggest challenge we faced.
Every day, I was surrounded by people that were dying and in agony. Every day I could see how fast it could happen.
Was agonizing. When he first went to Croatia, the borders closed and we lost all contact. Then he was transferred to Germany, and for 4 years we absolutely had no contact with him.
That sense of normality, that simply being alive was something you could take for granted, suddenly disappeared. At any moment, anyone could be hit. And another thing that changed a lot of my life was that I volunteered to go to the civil militia, and being 15 years old,
I had to take responsibility. I had my own gun that was able of killing people, and I was a soldier.
that also changed a lot of my life.
As I already mentioned, the separation of my parents while we stayed in Bosnia with our grandparents, it changed everything. My father went to Germany for medical treatment, and because we were unable to reach him for such a long time, the relations between my parents was shaken.
Yeah, many things changed. It was a completely different situation.
All of a sudden, we didn't have a home anymore. We were in an unknown city. At the beginning of the war, every part of the family split up into different cities and different groups.
After a while, when things got worse in Kabul, and it changed everything in our family life. Our family have been divided in several parts. In every part went to different direction, to different countries, and it was tough. It was a really hard time.
It even went so far that we tried to meet up with as many family members that we had and make a big group meeting, so that for that short time we could have a feeling of a normal family again.
Parents was shaken, which eventually led to their divorce. My sister and I stayed with our mother's grandparents. This had a very negative impact on us, and even today, it leaves a significant mark. Every day was a challenge. We lived in constant fear of the bombings, wondering if they would hit us today or if we would survive the day.
We also had to come to terms with the fact that some friends, acquaintances and family members were no longer there. Some lost their lives in bombings, while others fell into front.
Those fears stay with you for your entire life. Well, you can probably tell that it still affects me deeply. It is still terribly painful emotionally, because being a child of war is something I wouldn't wish on anyone.
Every day's worries in feeling of being killed by rockets or suicide bombs is not easy to forget.
You are denied a childhood and everything a child should have. Just like that, it's simply stolen from you. We don't actually realize how lucky we are when there's peace in the world.
Especially I remember there was a time when a military plane crashed into our house while we were home, and it will never be forgotten.
It is something, it is an atrocity. It leaves a lasting mark on your psychological well-being.
Experiencing a war is never nice. Wars are never nice. Things that you experience in a war will always have an effect on your soul. It stays for your entire life.
And it steals your childhood, steals everything from you. Simply, even now, just the thought of it and talking about the stories really affect me. Leaving your homes, it leaves a really, really deep scar on your psychological health. And of course, just the thought of it and this story, it really hits me hard. Well, was there something you missed? What was lacking for you? Well, besides the electricity and water, which we didn't have for 4 full years, at first as children we didn't understand how much food and everything else we would lack. And of course, like any other child, we miss sweets a lot. I remember my sister would imagine different cakes and candy almost every night. She always loved to eat well. And at one point I just said to her, Shayla, I think we're old enough that we shouldn't think about it. We have to accept that we don't have it. And when the humanitarian aid finally started arriving, we received sugar. We would eat it by the spoonful, without anything else. That feeling, our parents, our mother, grandmother and grandfather, didn't forbid us from doing that. Because we truly had nothing else during the war. And only after things calmed down a bit, after 4 years, did we receive our first aid package from Germany. It was called Children to Children Aid. Germany donated the most to the children of Bosnia back then. That was when we got our first sweets. I remember there were Haribo gummies, Milka chocolate, and even some banana flavored juices.
Hearing the stories always start with a look at the world that's gone now. Leyla Mahmutovic from Bosnia tells us about what she went through. She had a childhood that was safe. Ami Asghari from Iran has told us he had a childhood that was safe too. Mansour Secondary from Afghanistan tells us the same story. These people talk about their childhood, it was always the same. They all had a childhood that was safe. In Bosnia, this little girl who was 6 years old lived a life with her twin sister. They had everything they needed. In Iran, people lived lives and everything was very orderly. This was their everyday life. They felt like the future was going to be okay. In Afghanistan, this big family was very close. They helped each other out. Their family was what held everything together. All three of these places had that peace that was something they just thought it was normal. They had peace. That was just how things were. I am looking at the picture in front of me. It is a picture that makes me think about the life and the ordinary everyday life and strong family that they had. The safe life and the ordinary everyday life and the strong family were really good until the day war came. The war was very bad. It destroyed the safe life and the ordinary everyday life within the strong family with a violence. Leyla Mahmutovic had some tough times. These tough times happened at that times, but they were all very hard for her. Everything changed when her father got hurt. This made her stop talking with him for 4 years. She was very upset for 4 years because she did not hear anything from her once. She went through a lot of pain during those 4 years without a sign of life. In Iran, people first heard the horror. Ami Asghari recalls the sirens that went off when there were air raids. The man also remembers spending nights in the basement. On those nights, the big sheikhs of the earth decided who would live and who would die. Running away means you leave everything behind. You give up the place where you're from and you lose who you are just so you can stay alive. That is what war makes you do. War takes everything from you, even your home, your identity, and all you get is the chance to survive, to stay alive. That is a very high price to pay for the people of Afghanistan, for the people of Bosnia, and for the people of Iran. Leyla Mahmutovic is still hurting. It has been a tough time, but the bad things that happened to her are still fresh in her mind. She talks about what she went through. She cries. She says that someone took away her childhood, and that is very heartbreaking. The men from Iran and Afghanistan always had to be careful. They know that peace can disappear at any moment. They have something in common. They know that war is not something that you can just forget about. War is something that changes you the way you see the world. Ami Asghari and Mansour Secondary used to be happy and not worry about things. Now they are strong because of what they went through. Those are these people now because of war. Trauma. Looking at the maps and the casualty counts, we see the invisible reality. In war, trauma is not a moment. Trauma rewires in the mind over a long, harsh period. The World Health Organization classifies this under mental health in emergencies. The World Health Organization notes an increase in depression and PTSD in these regions. For the people of Kabul, Tehran, or Bosnia, the reality is often complex PTSD. Complex PTSD shows a state of a hypervigilance. As Nigel Hunt explains in Memory, War and Trauma, this type of conflicts shatters a person's ability to trust the world. However, the consequences of war do not stop at the individual. They permeate in the entire family structure. In his study War, Transitional Memory and Documentary Film, Jay Cartier argues that the war creates a collective silence or disordered memory within the home. Family often struggles to communicate their experience, leading to a phenomenon known as a transitional memory. The stress of the conflict never ends when the ceasefire is signed. We have seen parents pass the stress of the conflict to the children. The stress of the conflict passes through a feeling of safety. Children who grow up in the shadows of the Iran-Iraq war, on the sieges in Bosnia, inherit the fears and anxieties of their parents. When the children never even saw the battlefields themselves, the moral injury or soldier, it doesn't matter. They will still remain as silent wounds at the family table. Allowing families to finally proceed iterate grief, documentary film, and storytelling often comes all the way to break the cycle, as Cartier highlights. To heal a nation and its trauma, it requires addressing the deep-seated crisis of the minds and the broken bones of the family left in the wake of the storm.
Wars don't just end when the guns fall silent. They live on in the empty chairs at dinner tables and the memories of those left behind. From Iran to Bosnia, and from Bosnia to Afghanistan, the story remains the same. A normal life shattered in one afternoon, and a lifetime spent coming to terms with the pieces. Because in the end, war doesn't just change borders, it changes the very heart of a family.